My daughter wrote it 3 days before Christmas. Not a call, not even a careful text. Just a message that landed heavy and flat on my screen. Don't expect us for Christmas Day. We're going to my husband's parents. They're more important. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. I read it once, then again. I didn't misread it. There was no hidden softness, no apology tucked between lines, just a declaration, clean and sharp. My name is Eulalia Mercer. Most people call me Leah. I am 71 years old, and I have buried a husband, raised a daughter, and learned that silence can be louder than shouting. I didn't respond. I didn't ask what I had done wrong. I didn't remind her of the traditions she grew up with or the promises she'd made 2 weeks earlier. I didn't type anything at all. I opened my laptop. There were accounts I had set up years ago, some when Caris was still in elementary school, others more recently when she told me it would be easier if she could handle things herself. Savings, emergency access, temporary help that somehow never ended. I didn't hesitate. I didn't cry while clicking. I closed every account she could touch. I removed her access, changed permissions, and confirmed each action. It took less than 10 minutes. When I shut the laptop, my coffee was still warm. That surprised me. The next morning, my doorbell rang before I had finished brushing my hair. I knew it was her before I looked. Urgency has a sound. Caris stood on my porch, coat half-zipped, phone already in her hand. Her face wasn't soft with regret. It was tight with irritation. "Mom," she said, stepping forward, "we need to talk." I didn't invite her in. She lifted her phone and held it out like evidence. "My card keeps getting declined," she said, "everywhere." She looked at me then, really looked, as if expecting confusion or panic. Instead, she found something else entirely. After my husband died, my life in Portland became quiet in a way that felt manageable. I learned which silences were peaceful and which ones echoed. I kept the house the same because it grounded me. Morning coffee, a walk after lunch, volunteering twice a week. Routines gave shape to days that might otherwise blur. Caris used to call every few days back then, not long conversations, just enough to say, "I'm checking on you," or "Did you eat?" She would laugh easily, tell me small things, complain about work. I held on to those calls like proof that something solid still existed between us. At first, the changes were easy to excuse. "Sorry, Mom, it's been a week." She'd say, "I get it." I'd answer quickly, "You're busy." Busy became the explanation for everything. Calls shortened. Texts replaced voices. Plans were made and quietly abandoned. When she did call, Nolan was always there. At first, he'd just say hello in the background. Then he started answering questions meant for her. "How's work?" I asked once. "She slammed," Nolan replied before Caris could speak. "Deadlines. Another time." I mentioned Sunday dinner. "We'll see," Nolan said. "Schedules are tight." Caris didn't contradict him. She rarely did. I told myself this was marriage, that couples blended their lives, their voices, that I shouldn't take it personally. When I mentioned missing her, she laughed lightly and said, "Mom, don't be dramatic." So I stopped mentioning it. I adjusted instead. I waited longer between messages. I made my invitations sound casual, optional, easy to decline. When they canceled, I smiled into the phone and said, "Another time." There was a moment, small enough to ignore. "That should have stopped me," I said. "I haven't seen you in weeks." She answered, distracted. "You know how it is." I did not know how it was, but I nodded anyway, even though she couldn't see me. Later, when Nolan suggested it would be simpler if she had access to handle shared expenses, I agreed without asking what that really meant. When Caris said, "It just makes things smoother," I believed her. Smoothness became the goal. No friction, no demands, no discomfort. Somewhere in that effort, I stopped noticing how often I bent and how rarely they did. The first time Caris asked for money, it sounded reasonable. "Mom," the car finally gave out. She said, breathless, "We just need help with the down payment. We'll handle the rest." How much, I asked. $15,000. She said quickly, as if speed might soften the number. "Just this once." I transferred it that afternoon. She thanked me twice. Nolan sent a short message with a thumbs up. The relief in her voice felt worth it. A month later, she called again. "It's nothing dramatic," she said. "Just expenses stacking up. Utilities. Insurance. Temporary stuff?" "How temporary?" I asked. "We're almost caught up," she said. "A few weeks." I sent 10,000. There was no follow-up thank you this time, just a text. Later that night, got it. The requests began to arrive with less ceremony. "Mom, can you spot us for taxes?" "Mom, we're covering medical bills." "Mom, things are tight right now." Each amount made sense on its own. 5,000, 8,000, 12,000. Each explanation came polished, already rehearsed. I told myself this was what parents did. I told myself this was support, not dependency. After one transfer, I waited. No call came. 2 days later, I asked, "Did everything go through?" "Yes," Caris said. "We're good." That was it. No relief. No gratitude. Just confirmation. The moment that changed everything came during a call Nolan answered instead of her. "I was wondering," I said carefully, "how long things have been tight." There was a pause, long enough to notice. "Markets fluctuate," Nolan said smoothly. "You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I waited for Caris to speak. She didn't. Later that week, when I hesitated before sending another transfer, Caris sighed. "Mom," she said, irritation slipping through. "You don't even need it right now." The words landed wrong, not careless, not joking. Certain. "I don't," I said. She laughed lightly, as if I were missing something obvious. "I just mean, you're comfortable. We're building," Nolan added. "It's an investment in the family. An investment requires consent. It requires clarity." I realized then that neither had been asked for in a long time. I sent the money anyway, not because I agreed, but because stopping felt harder than continuing. Afterward, I stared at my phone, waiting for a reaction that never came. The silence told me more than any explanation could have. I opened my laptop without ceremony. No trembling hands, no rehearsed speeches in my head, just a quiet certainty that something needed to change. The first account was the oldest. I had opened it when Caris was still a child, adding to it month after month because that was what responsible parents did. College, a future, a safety net. Her name sat beside mine, familiar and unquestioned. I clicked into the details and froze. She had full access, transfer privileges, withdrawal permissions, settings. I did not remember approving, but there they were, clear as day. "That can't be right," I murmured, though there was no one to hear me. I moved through the rest. Savings, emergency funds, an account Nolan had once suggested we share, just in case something happened to me. I had agreed because it sounded practical, because he said it quickly, because I trusted my daughter. There was no anger rising in me. That surprised me most. What I felt instead was clarity, sharp and clean. I removed names. I changed permissions. I confirmed security questions I hadn't touched in years. Each action prompted a warning. "Are you sure you want to proceed?" Yes, I said aloud, answering every one of them. The transfers came next. Money moved quietly, efficiently, like it had always done for her, except this time it moved away. When I reached the final account, the one I had forgotten existed, my breath caught. A joint account opened 2 years earlier, meant for shared expenses. I stared at the balance longer than I should have. I added the numbers slowly. Then again, just to be sure. The total across everything settled in my chest with unexpected weight. I had known I was generous. I had not known how completely. That's enough, I said. Firm now, I closed the account. 3 clicks. Confirm, confirm, done. When the screen finally went still, I leaned back and waited for guilt to arrive. It didn't. What came instead was something steadier. Relief. Perhaps, or protection, finally taking shape. My phone buzzed once, a missed call from Caris. I didn't return it. I shut the laptop and sat there, listening to my own breathing, aware that something fundamental had shifted. Not because I had taken something from her, but because I had taken myself out of reach. The quiet that followed felt unfamiliar, but it did not feel wrong. Caris didn't knock. She hit the door once, sharp and impatient, like she had already decided I was being unreasonable. I opened it just enough to see her face, tight, flushed, not apologetic. "Mom," she said, exhaling hard. "What did you do? I didn't invite you in." I replied. She glanced past me, as if expecting to step inside anyway. My card stopped working. None of them work. I was in the middle of errands. "Sit down," Nolan said, coming up behind her. He had driven her, I realized. He always did when things felt urgent. "We're not sitting," I said. "You can say what you came to say." Caris crossed her arms. "You overreacted. That text wasn't meant the way you took it. It was written the way you meant it," I said. "That's not fair," she snapped. "You know we had plans. You didn't even ask. I didn't need to." Nolan stepped forward then, voice calm, practiced. "Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is. The money you moved it was promised." I met his eyes. Nothing was promised. "You said it was for her future," Caris said quickly, seizing on it. "You said that." "I said I was helping," I replied. "I didn't say I was surrendering control." She scoffed. "You're punishing me because I chose my husband's family for one holiday." I shook my head. "I protected myself because you decided I didn't matter." Nolan tried again. Softer now. "Leah, let's be reasonable. We're talking about amounts that were already earmarked. 15,000 for the car," I said evenly. 10,000 for expenses. 5,000 for taxes. 8,000 for medical bills. 12,000 after that. And more I haven't even mentioned. Caris's face flickered. Just once. That was different. She said, "We were building something. With my money." I said, "With family money," Nolan corrected. "And if this gets complicated, there could be consequences. Accounts flagged, questions asked." The word lingered. Complicated. I stepped back, widening the space between us. "You're not here to apologize," I said. "You're here because access was removed." Caris opened her mouth, then closed it. Nolan's jaw tightened. "I won't reopen anything." I continued. "Not today, not later. This isn't over." Nolan said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But it won't go the way you expect." I closed the door while they were still standing there. I didn't listen for footsteps. I already knew they wouldn't leave easily. I met Daphne Rourke 2 days later. I hadn't told Caris I was going. I hadn't told anyone except myself, and that felt like the right kind of quiet. Daphne didn't waste time. She glanced at the folder in my hands and said, "Tell me the order it happened in, not how you felt, what happened." I did as she asked. I listed the transfers. I described the access. I repeated Nolan's words as accurately as I could. When I finished, she didn't soften her voice. This is financial exploitation. I stiffened. I gave the money willingly. Willingly doesn't mean safely, she replied. And it doesn't mean informed. You were pressured, isolated, and misled. She slid the statements back toward me. You did the right thing closing access. Now we formalize that. What does that mean, I asked. It means restructuring your estate, new permissions, updated beneficiaries, no shared authority. She paused. And it means documentation. Everything. I swallowed. She's my daughter. I know. Daphne said. That doesn't grant her entitlement. She walked me through the changes with precise language. Each step removed a piece of leverage I hadn't known I'd handed over. I signed where she told me to sign, initialed where she pointed. Halfway through, I hesitated. What if this makes things worse? Daphne met my eyes. They're already worse. You're just seeing them clearly now. She gathered the papers, then stopped. One more thing. Yes. Has anyone else been monitoring or relying on those accounts? Anyone who would notice immediately I thought of Nolan's certainty. The speed with which they'd arrived at my door, I don't know. I said carefully. Daphne nodded once. Then we proceed as if they were. By the time I left, my hands ached from gripping the folder. I sat in my car for a moment, breathing through the heaviness pressing against my ribs. Protecting myself felt colder than I expected. It also felt necessary. My phone buzzed with a message I didn't open. I already knew who it was from. I started the engine and drove home, aware that what I'd done that morning would change what came next, whether Caris accepted it or not. The call came the morning after I met with Daphne. A calm voice, practiced, as if it had delivered bad news many times before. Mrs. Mercer, he said. This is Detective Jonas Pike. I'd like to ask you a few questions about recent financial transfers connected to your daughter and her husband. I didn't sit down. I leaned against the counter and listened. We're reviewing a series of accounts that show irregular movement, he continued. Large deposits, rapid withdrawals, and access patterns that don't match reported income. I said, those deposits were mine. There was a brief pause. That helps, he replied. Can you tell me approximately how much I named the amounts I remembered? 15,000, 10,000, 5,000, 8,000, 12,000? More, spread across months. Saying them aloud made them feel heavier. Did your daughter tell you what the funds were for? He asked. She said expenses. I answered, temporary help. And did her husband, Nolan Price, speak for her during these requests? Yes, I said. Often. Another pause. Papers shifting. A pen tapping once. Mr. Price's name appears repeatedly in the flagged transactions. Detective Pike said, authorizations, routing changes, timing. He seems to be the common denominator. My chest tightened, not with shock, but recognition. Nolan's certainty at my door, his warning about things getting complicated. This investigation began before Christmas, the detective added. Your daughter would have known scrutiny was coming. I closed my eyes. The urgency made sense now, the speed, the anger, the way Caris had come to my house as if something were on fire. Am I in trouble? I asked. No, he said immediately. You're not the focus, but the funds you provided are now part of the record. Evidence. Daphne's word echoed. What happens next? I asked. We continue, he said. And I advise you to maintain the boundaries you've put in place. After the call ended, I stood there longer than necessary. The truth had a shape now. Not a misunderstanding, not family tension, a pattern. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail. Nolan's voice, controlled and low. We need to talk, he said. Now, I didn't delete it. I didn't return it. I saved it, exactly as Daphne had told me to do, and set the phone down. The quiet felt thinner than before, stretched tight by what I now knew they had been trying to outrun. They came back that evening together. Caris stood a step behind Nolan this time, her shoulders rounded, eyes fixed somewhere past me. Nolan did the talking. He always did when the tone needed to change. "Leah," he said, softer than before, "we want to clear the air." "You can do that from there," I replied, keeping the door where it was. Caris lifted her head. "Mom, we didn't mean for things to spiral. We're under a lot of pressure." "I know," I said. "I've learned how much." Nolan nodded, as if we were agreeing. That's exactly it. Pressure makes people make mistakes. And mistakes can have consequences. "For who?" I asked. "For everyone," he said. "Investigations don't stay contained. They spread. Families get pulled in." Caris finally spoke. "We just want this to stop." "Then stop coming here," I said. Nolan's jaw tightened. "That's not realistic." "What's not realistic?" I said. "Is thinking intimidation counts as reconciliation." He exhaled sharply. "No one is intimidating you." "You warned me about things getting complicated," I said. "You warned me again just now." "That's concern," he said. "That's pressure," I replied. Caris stepped forward, her voice thin. "Mom, please. We're family." I looked at her then. Really looked. She didn't meet my eyes. "Family doesn't require access," I said. "And it doesn't threaten—" Nolan's composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what this could cost us?" "Yes," I said, "and I know what it already cost me." He took another step, too close. "If you cooperate with this investigation, I already am," I said. The words landed hard. Nolan froze. Caris sucked in a breath, sharp and involuntary. "I told the detective everything." I continued. "I documented the transfers. I saved the messages. I will answer any question they ask." Caris whispered my name, but it wasn't an appeal. It was fear. Nolan's voice rose. "You would do that to your own daughter." "I'm not doing anything to her," I said. "I'm refusing to protect lies." He stared at me, then laughed once. Brittle. "You think this ends well for anyone? I think it ends." I said, "That's enough." I stepped back and closed the door. I locked it. I stood there until I heard their voices fade, Nolan's sharp with anger. Caris is barely there. When the house went quiet again, I didn't feel brave. I felt steady, and for the first time since the message arrived, I knew exactly which side of the fear I was standing on. It arrived in envelopes and phone calls. Not sirens. Detective Pike updated me first. "The accounts are frozen, pending review," he said. "We're tracing transfers. Your cooperation is noted." Nolan tried to call me twice that day. I didn't answer. He left a message anyway, voice tight. This didn't have to happen. I saved it and forwarded it to Daphne, just as she'd instructed. Daphne called an hour later. "We're proceeding," she said. "Beneficiaries updated. Authorities notified. Any attempt to pressure you goes on record." Caris texted that evening. One line, "Please talk to me." I replied once. Through counsel. The typing bubble appeared, vanished, appeared again, then stopped. 2 days later, I learned Nolan's parents had hired an attorney of their own. The following morning, they withdrew. No calls, no offers to help. The people who were important when money flowed were suddenly unreachable when questions followed it. Caris came by once more. Alone this time. She didn't knock. She stood at the edge of the driveway and said, "They took my name off everything." I said, "I didn't take your name off, my love. I took it off my accounts." She flinched. "People are asking." "I'm answering," I said. Her voice dropped. "I look like the problem." I held her gaze. "You made yourself the center. Control and image mattered more than honesty." She opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to negotiate. Christmas came without announcements or apologies. I didn't set an extra place. I didn't wait for a call that wouldn't come. I cooked for myself and ate without rushing. The quiet didn't accuse me. It rested. A week later, Daphne sat across from me and slid the final papers forward. "This protects you," she said. "It also tells the truth." I signed. My hand didn't shake. Here's the life lesson I took from all of it, and I carry it carefully. Love is not a transaction, and help is not a blank check. If someone requires your silence to keep receiving your support, that isn't family. That's leverage. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. If this story resonated with you, please like the video, subscribe, and share where you're listening from in the comments. Stories travel farther when we tell the truth together. I didn't win by taking anything back. I won by deciding who had access.